it's not the case that every model is replaced by a GenAI solution necessarily. So that obviously has to go through some consideration. However, there are new ways that models can support humans in their day-to-day work, aside from creating new opportunities or assisting in the creation of new opportunities. So I work in an internal GenAI platform, which means platform means that it's meant to support many use cases. It's meant to integrate with various other tools. It's meant to foster collaboration internally. And my focus is on safety and security, so around the topics of responsible AI, around the topics of data science, and building that together, making it user friendly for what we understand as user friendly.
Hi, friends, and welcome to this exciting episode of Leading with Data, where we talk to industry leaders and bring their perspective for all of you. Today, we have Eleni Verteouri, who is an AI tech lead and director at UBS with over a decade of impactful work in model development. As an acclaimed AI guest lecturer and advisor, and a recipient of the Forbes Cyprus 20 Women in Tech Award in 2024, Eleni has made a huge, significant contributions to shaping modern financial technologies. She holds a Master of Science in Quantitative Finance from ETH Zurich and a Master's in Engineering in Electrical and Computer Engineering from University of Patras. In this discussion, we talk about her journey, her views on responsible AI, and application in banking. So let's get started. Hi, Ellen, and welcome to the show.
Hello, nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. So, Eleni, I would like to hear, your journey into AI and technology in general. How did it start? Were there any specific points in this journey when were really either fascinated, or what was the why and how in terms of how you got into AI and technology space?
So that's a great question. I believe I haven't really answered that publicly so far. And yeah, if I may, I will go a few years back in my studies, not too many years back. But yes, I guess I always had the propensity towards more technical subjects, but I
Mm-hmm.
was not really sure exactly what. And at some point, as I was finishing my first engineering degree, I was looking more into making presentations about GPUs and distributed computing. And
Interesting.
one thing, yeah, back then was that cloud was not as widespread as it is today. So
Mm-hmm.
looking for use cases that would require such high compute back, let's say 10 years in time, it appeared to be that finance had a lot of demand for difficult calculations. And so I was drawn into this field of financial mathematics,
Mm-hmm.
which eventually made me go to Switzerland and also to start working for a bank. So this is, I believe, a turning point in terms of how I got into technology or AI and so on.
Interesting. So, and you also did a master's of science in quantitative finance. So was that before you joined the bank, or this was after you joined and got some experience in the bank, and then you went back to do your master's?
So yes, that's another great question. So I did what it felt like two masters back to back because the first degree already had the Master of Engineering, the focus on
Mm-hmm.
computers, and then I wanted to sort of go more into modeling direction. So I studied quantitative finance, which was a degree between mathematics and finance of ETH and the University of Zurich. where I have
Hmm.
also now the pleasure of returning back as an instructor. And then I moved on to do my master thesis with an investment bank in a similar area, and then I started as an intern and just moved on from that.
Interesting. And were there any other subjects you were exploring along with finance at that time? Because, for example, bio engineering is another interesting area which has a lot of data and uses GPUs as well. So were there any other fields you were exploring, or you were very sure that finance is the place to be?
That's another great question. So yes, indeed, the first master thesis was more focused on pattern recognition, if you on biomedical engineering, which was also a very promising area. So back then, both areas used MATLAB.
Right.
For those of us who already started working some time back, as Python was not at the stage it is today. So there were a lot of commonalities. Ultimately, I found like finance was more rigorous at the time, and
Hmm.
therefore maybe more challenging. And I really liked the underlying mathematics that were about probabilities and uncertainty. And so I followed that direction. However, nowadays finance is also very much penetrated by AI, machine learning, pattern recognition. So we have data scientists in many different fields.
Right. Interesting. And I believe you joined Credit Suisse as in the risk management area, right? So since then, how has been your journey? Because I think there are multiple moving things in this period. A lot of development in AI and ML and how we look at compute, and obviously the changes in the financial world itself. So can you narrate this, journey from your perspective? How was it once you joined Credit Suisse back in 2014?
Absolutely, yes. It is quite interesting. So, Switzerland is a financial hub, and especially Zurich. So, there are international banks that operate globally and sort of have all these capabilities in house. Also, demand for very complicated models, and that was also a reason why I wanted to work at a big bank to have this sort of exposure. And yes, as mentioned, I started at an area that was close to the markets. There are some very complex financial products that require a lot of modeling and support, and also required to be able to react to changes quite fast. So it was a
Hmm.
more dynamic area than research. And then I moved on. I moved to the treasury area, which is very
Hmm.
exciting because from an intellectual point of view, it was the first time after a long time that Switzerland had negative interest rates.
Right.
And therefore, all the models had to be rethought, and we had to run a lot of simulations. So there, we were building new models, which is actually something that we're also doing these days. So that I consider
Hmm.
myself lucky to have built so many new things as a developer, if you will. And then also we banks had to adjust to the aftermath of the liquidity crisis. So therefore, that also gave rise to a whole new set of models, liquidity models that we built in-house, and we launched, we optimized. Um, but yes, as mentioned, I was more looking always for the new challenge, and that's why probably I had almost 7 roles by now in this, yeah, in the combined organization.
Hmm.
So yes, after a few years of launching things, I also looked for new challenges.
Interesting. And during this period, what are some of the challenges or areas where you've seen AI being used in this domain? Can you share a few examples? And has the approach to solving these questions changed drastically over these last 10 years or so?
I personally feel that is very much the case, and myself coming from an engineering background, the constraints in terms of mathematics were not always so obvious, and perhaps I was the first to challenge. And looking back also both at the academia and at the practice, we found many ways to incorporate also AI in the traditional financial theory and mathematics theory, in terms of also being more efficient, how we calibrate our parameters or how we do our back testing. So still operating in the same framework, but more efficiently. But also we saw AI coming in terms of personalized service, in terms of end users building their own prototypes, in terms of how we estimate risks. So it has been, I guess, really transformational and easy to adopt.
Interesting. And this period, as you briefly referred to, that there were, liquidity crisis, there was COVID during this period. So, and then all of these are, very thin data problems, in the sense that, let's say when COVID was happening, you would need to model the risk, but you don't have a lot of data to go back to. So how has been dealing with those kind of challenges and problems, and any particular advice or approaches which you think people can adopt if they face something similar in future? Not maybe COVID, but thin data problems.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really something that used to come up a lot when we were thinking more into in terms of traditional models, statistical models, rule-based models, and regressions, and so on. Also because there is a very strict guidance in terms of how we are meant to develop things and handle our data. And yes, I guess back then it was a lot down to the individual to let's say overcome those challenges, and then if the individual was successful, then the solution would be adopted. These days I believe things can be looked at also from different angle, in terms of enterprises having established more of a data layer, a data infrastructure, a data governance, but also because the newer models, the GenAI models, may not require data as a starting point, or may be able to do synthetic data, metadata, help with the metadata. So it's a bit different these days, I feel.
That is true. That is true. And uh, your current role as a Gen AI leader, can you elaborate a bit more on what kind of problems are you working, and then how does this generative AI and LLMs and maybe AI agents change this landscape?
Absolutely. So I think it's not the case that every model is replaced by a Gen AI solution necessarily. So that obviously has to go through some consideration. However, there are new ways that models can support humans in their day-to-day work, aside from creating new opportunities or assisting in the creation of new opportunities. So I work in an internal Gen AI platform, which means platform means that it's meant to support many use cases. It's meant to integrate with various other tools. It's meant to foster collaboration internally, and my focus is on safety and security. So around the topics of responsible AI, around the topics of data science. Um, and building that together, making it user friendly for what we understand as user friendly. That's one part of my role. So a developer, a Python developer, that's doing hands-on work. On the other side, aside from having some responsibility around the aspects of this platform, comes the need for some development guidelines. As I believe we want to drive adoption. So I'm also describing what are best practices internally and trying to think about all the different aspects, bringing all knowledge and new knowledge. And I'm also active in academic partnerships we have. These are also announced publicly, which would mean that aside from some instructor roles, we will try to conduct also some student projects. I think that's also not new, and see how we can foster a collaboration exchange between some well-established institutions.
Interesting. And this platform which you mentioned, this is being used internally in your organization, or this is also something which, let's say, the customers might use at some point?
That's a great question. I believe most enterprises are focusing on internal tools or building capabilities, right? I don't believe it has been announced that anything like that is meant to um, be interfacing a client, to my knowledge.
Mhm.
So the focus is to build capabilities that actually allow us to work with large language models, because it doesn't mean you have the model ready that you are ready to provide business value, right? Or you are complete from a safety, a quality perspective, a product perspective. So taking that model and making it work in a specific way, integrating it, that is, I think, where the job is. And this is something I believe for the enterprises that they have to figure out, perhaps with some partnership. Um, and it will take some time, perhaps, until that is at the level that is something that you want to share externally. That's my personal view. That's how I see it. I guess we are all new at learning and building these capabilities.
Sure. And so, from with that perspective in mind, right, when you think about responsible AI and making sure that the security aspects or the privacy aspects are taken care of, uh, I mean, what are some of the key focus areas, and how does that translate into action? So is it that your role involves a lot of education, or you would want to try jailbreaking some of these models and then seeing that are there any breakpoints? So can you kind of describe how do you bring responsibility AI while building a platform like this?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to speak from a theoretical perspective and my
Hmm.
personal view on that. Education is definitely one thing,
Hmm.
from the user to the developer, because also we see also a mixing of the roles. In terms of the engineers have to work now with AI, and also the data scientist may need perhaps to drive adoption at a faster pace. So uh, we need to be able to iterate quite fast on things.
Hmm.
At least I guess that's the expectation, that there is a lot of demand. Um,
Hmm.
so education is one pillar. Then there are a lot of discussions, right, to figure out what exactly responsible means to different people. These are internal, external discussions. I guess you might have seen that. Also, I like hearing from the community what they
Hmm.
think on these topics. Um, and yes, I think I have also personally noticed that A lot of startups are getting active in this area, some also from ETH, and trying to fill that gap, right? Of exactly how can we safely and responsibly adopt the new technologies, because that's, I guess, something that is on everyone's mind.
Yeah. And what are some of the key trends which you see playing out, let's say, in the next few years? Uh, Overall, I mean, AI in general, but also if you can, specifically talk about responsible AI and, what are some of the concerns which might come up or which might become more important as we go into this AI era, which is coming our way.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question, and I guess it's a very rich question. So there are a lot of things to consider. I think, yeah, we have to rethink a lot of things, also from the business perspective to the product perspective, to how we run our governance. Not to be too restrictive with the things we do, but also on the other hand, to let's say honor the trust we're given when we bring such a new solution. So I think AI red teaming, Gen AI red teaming is definitely a key trend.
Mhm,
Then all the considerations around responsible AI, all the consideration about artificial general intelligence, all these trends about computers getting super smart, I think it's
mhm,
definitely something to keep an eye on. Then ways of working, because a lot of the work that's been traditionally done, um, I think comes to questions. Sometimes I also think to myself, okay, is this particular task a task that looks like an annotation task, or is this a task that I'm
mhm,
building a new AI? And
mhm,
I think with the models getting smarter and better and cheaper and faster, we really have also to think about how many hours we need to work, and so on. So I think people will also be more independent because they can
mhm,
accomplish many more tasks, and also the fusion of AI and personal life. I think that's going to be interesting. Seeing, let's say, people building AI therapies or AI companions. So,
mhm.
my view, it's going to be transformational, and definitely safety and security are key topics, together also with sustainability.
And what is the part which you feel would be most challenging uh, for us as a, let's say, society or as a, as humanity overall?
Well, I guess it's a part that we ensure that this sort of innovation is benefiting in a way that is somewhat fair the population, which is a
Mhm,
challenge because it may be in the hand of a few people. So how do we make sure that this is somehow uplifting a large part, at least, of the population? How we make sure that this new knowledge or capabilities is something that's available, and the new skills is something that is attainable for most people. I think that's a challenge.
mhm,
um, and yeah, this is also something that I feel will require perhaps more coordination, more communication. So this is, I think, the big challenge, because there is gonna be a lot of change.
yeah. And, historically, with machine learning, we used to have these, very clearly defined, let's say, evaluation metrics, or there were ways to identify biases in the models. But with LLMs, that becomes extremely difficult. And then if you build, let's say, agentic workflows over and above these LLMs, it gets even more trickier. So, are there any best practices? Are there any uh, uh, things which you can share in terms of how to address, let's say, or even keep that in the back of mind when you are building a AI driven application? How do you try and keep biases out, or at least be aware of those, and then try and kind of fix them?
That's a great question because I guess with more traditional machine learning, it was quite easier to point to the particular variable or have an explainability feature that you could sort of control and validate for biases present in the past data. Whereas with an LLM, I think the explainability problem has not really been solved, so you don't really understand the question. I think uh, agents, which is something that I'm really excited about, for me could be
Mhm.
seen also something as part of the solution because an agent could help us sort of simulate a scenario.
Uh,
And this is
mm,
something that we tend to do a lot in finance, like simulate something many, many times and see, okay, what is the average and what are the outcomes that are really frequent and are they acceptable or we need to go back in the process and change something instead of just sampling and then understanding after a very long time we create a bias process.
mhm,
Um, so I hope that agents actually will help us control these aspects or create explainability layers around LLMs or provide some sort of guarantees because maybe nothing is certain, but at
mhm,
least we can have some bandwidth of operating in a more safe and secure and acceptable way. Of course, for the most part, there is also a human in the loop, right? At some
yeah.
point. So as we build out these capabilities and formulate perhaps a few things mathematically, we will be, I think, better able to handle such scenarios. And always we have to know that we are comparing perhaps with another human in the process that may have its own biases and its own views and subjectivity, and so we have to always leave for some room for that.
Interesting. And uh, any particular agents or startups which you've come across which are working in this space?
Uh, that's a great question. So I think there is a lot of focus from the accelerators, the combinators, right, on
Hmm.
technology startups, particularly AI technology startups, or startups that are able to also incorporate AI to help them maybe with their customer support so that they are quite efficient.
Hmm.
Um, and there is a lot of focus, I believe, on integration. I've seen some things that are aiming to replace consultants or just either focusing on solving just one particular problem of the data ETL on the metadata. So I'm really excited. I think not all of the problems around GenAI will be solved by a few big companies. Some of them
Hmm.
will as models get better. So that will be quite difficult to predict. But I think there will also be more misuse cases. And then again, anything around evaluation, safety, compliance, security, how we interact with LLMs in terms of is there a special programmatic way? Can we collapse them? Can we make sure that hallucination is really, really a very small risk? Can we have the agents execute, right? I think all these things are new, and yeah, I think these are problems that are worth solving, particularly also for agents in enterprises, right, that are helping humans with their work.
Interesting. And within the financial world, obviously, there is huge amount of, let's say, trading going on, and there is, every millisecond kind of makes a huge difference. In that kind of scenario, how do these, let's say, LLMs, which have, let's say, at least for now, have latency as one of the challenges, and then, when we move to, let's say, agentic flows, that will further, probably, at least in the short term, increase, and until we find a solution to that. So how do you manage this latency factor in either deploying models or deploying this safety layer for these models when they go out in real world?
Yes, that's a great question. In fact, I'm not personally aware that,
Hmm.
let's say, the other techniques are that are in algorithmic trading are getting replaced by an LLM, so to speak. This so far, right?
Yeah.
Either I haven't read also either a paper or someone suggesting that in this particular occasion, it's good to deploy an LLM. There are perhaps various reasons. One is the latency. The other one might have to do with the need to be really strict mathematically and statistically how
Yeah.
you formulate things. And that you cannot do yet with an LM,
Mm.
as it has not exactly been proven why it works
Yeah.
in this sense. But general transformer architectures may be of use. However,
Hmm.
financial institutions typically tend not to make public what has been
Of
profitable.
course. Yeah.
So there is a balance there. Um,
Hmm.
but other tasks that are around algorithmic trading, right, and are more process driven,
Hmm.
this can be complemented, right? Anything that has to do with documentation or testing. Then this is still something that is quite open. It's something that I think is common for all the office work that we
Hmm.
do. What I think is different it is maybe the testing and the data that enter, right,
Yeah.
the application. So this is something quite specific. What data do you want to feed it, and how do you want to evaluate the output?
Yeah. And among all the applications of AI and ML, what would be, let's say, a few applications or use cases which you would love to see getting solved with use of AI? So, what are some of the, let's say, personal dream projects of sorts or personal problems you would love to solve using AI?
Um, that's a great question. Actually, I haven't thought that much, but I'm also very excited about seeing problems that AI machine learning has solved, to see them being solved with an LM solution. So I'm also really interested to see, for example, can we solve some of this problem easier? Because that's something that already sparked curiosity, right? We could maybe still parse documents and so on and make some insights out of them in the past, but it's a different exercise doing it with, let's say, an
Yeah.
LM that can understand audio and video, right? Or
Yeah.
um, so seeing problems getting solved easier and faster and less tactically in a way is something that's
Hmm.
exciting, but also one thing that maybe is sticking with me is like, okay, we celebrated in the past when a computer, or we noted in terms of, not to pick sides, that when a computer beat the humans in chess, so is now an LLM able to sort of compete in that? Is language, right, the key differentiator? And also keen to see This new technology is helping people in terms of mental health, for example,
Mhm.
in terms of providing empathy, or in terms of helping neurodivergent individuals integrate better, like making a better world for everyone. So these are cases, along with maybe having shorter watching days, that would be really interesting.
Interesting, very interesting. And personally, in your own workflows, be it coding or be it, let's say, any communications, how much do you delegate to LLMs versus how much are you yourself doing?
That's an also an interesting question. Also, maybe personally, I've been both a model developer, but also I've worked as an AI product manager. And
Mhm.
yes, I feel that now the boundaries are really close, because not only you can write a lot of your Python code, at least with the help of a copilot and so on, but you can even ask for some troubleshooting questions. So you get really independent building things. And I guess some people are working on building an engineer, software engineer, out of an LM. So definitely for code.
Mhm.
Um, for the more for the other things that are more insightful, I don't tend to use LLMs as much, but a lot of for proofreading, or when for brainstorming a new topic.
Mhm.
These are definitely areas that I use tools also personally and professionally.
Interesting. And any particular agents you have built and you're using for any personal use cases?
So agents are rather experimental, I guess, at this
Hmm.
point, right?
Right.
The people are building with a lot of different frameworks. Um, that's also where I am. I think they are the most promising. And yeah, it's interesting to see how agents really improve once they are powered by a stronger model that can follow instructions better. Um, and what I've noticed is agents tend also to be quite good when you can describe a problem for them really well to solve, or when you can really
Hmm.
describe the starting point. So
Yeah.
that means you have a lot of domain expertise, right? Already, that you are helping them solve them. You understand the solution. When you describe them or give them a problem that's not well defined, the outcome is not so interesting, no matter the architecture they are operating. So I think that's an area to look for,
Hmm.
definitely. And yeah, I of course I'm running some experiments, um, and yeah, I guess that's the state where this is overall, as no one, I believe none of the main cloud platforms at the moment have really a complete or comprehensive agent offering. So this is really in the experimentation phase.
Yeah. And your as your journey in this industry and domain, uh, who have been, let's say, key influencers or mentors to you, and how has that shaped up your leadership style, your thinking style over the years?
That's also a great question, because means different things to people. I think I really grew more into leadership. I had a chance to work with a lot of research-oriented people during the year, so I could refine the way how I formulate things, and how I write maybe code or write documentation. But I also had the chance to teach others.
Hmm.
So that really helped with explaining and driving adoption. um, I think as a product manager is probably where I grew more the leadership skills as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to the more technical skills and the communication skills. But I guess everyone is becoming also more confident when they use the latest technologies, and yeah, it's hard to point at someone in particular
Mm-hmm.
and say, but there are a lot of actually really technical people with very high education working in the bank, and I guess it was great working with them.
Sure. And you've played so many different roles, and you've worked in very different and diverse setups. Like you mentioned, with researchers, you also teach, and then you've been a product manager. You obviously are also very active in the community. Uh, Deep down, which out of these roles resonates the most with you? So how do you describe or look at yourself uh, among these different roles?
Yes, that's true. I probably had a lot of diverse roles. I guess uh, in all of those roles, I had what we call these days a bit of a founder's mode. So I like to take responsibility end to
Okay.
end and um, uh, just don't just focus on one part of the problem. That's why I was open to switching roles and so on, and that also allowed me to see a lot of different things.
Mhm.
So I suppose yes, the common factor was just being open to the challenge and being open-minded. That's what would also would advise people that are starting out to not feel obliged to stick to just a particular role, and yeah, feel encouraged to explore many opportunities.
Sure. And when you reflect back, any pieces of advice or any thing which you would share with, let's say, your younger self who was just starting their career? So, what would be those pieces of advice?
That's also great. Perhaps yeah. Now we can look back and have the perfect idea what a career would be. I
Mhm.
would say that never consider yourself too junior for an opportunity, or never hesitate to express your ideas respectfully and to challenge. And don't assume that others always know better, or that the person that speaks the louder is the person that knows the most. So
Mhm.
I would encourage people to be outspoken, to be confident, to be assertive, and I would also encourage them to see things also as a hobby and pursue it also in their personal time if they wish to, if they want to advance faster, or if they want to find exciting new things to work on.
Mhm. And any specific, let's say, initiatives or things which you think can be done to, let's say, bring more women in tech? I mean, in general, that's a problem tech industry has had for some time. So, any thoughts on that?
Yes, that's also interesting because that was actually quite similar, either work in tech in finance, or in big tech, or in another corporate. And then yeah, sometimes you might see that there is just a team that is only women, or the women are sticking together. I think it's great these days that women are encouraged to work also in this area. And I would say uh, being empowered with new technologies is something like more of a an equalizer factor because yeah, you're not judged based on your looks. You're more judged on your capabilities. And what else can I say? It's great to show the women that we have already in tech, and also making sure that we are inclusive when we organize things, and make sure sometimes even to give some more opportunities if there is only a single person in a group of other people. So just to make sure they all get the same amount of chances to succeed at the end.
Interesting. Okay. Thanks for sharing those insights and perspectives. Uh, Towards the end of each show, Eleni, what we do is ask a few rapid fire questions with our guests, and the idea is to just know them better as a person. So I would want you to answer whatever comes top of the mind as answers to these questions, right? So, any particular book which had a huge influence on you?
um, I have to say, yes, the last book I read recently, it was 0 to 1 by
Hmm.
Peter Thiel, and it narrated through some interesting technology at, advancements of the recent history. So that was, I guess, an impactful book.
Interesting. Which startup are you most excited about, which you've come across recently?
Um, I have to say there are a few, and maybe some of the startups
Hmm.
that now gotten quite big in this space.
Hmm.
I really like working with Perplexity. It has made an impact on my day-to-day life, on my coding life,
Hmm.
or hobbies, and so on. So probably is the one that I'm most excited to see where they go from here.
Okay. And what does a typical, day look like for you?
Well, yes, that's a great question. So I typically work on the basis of something between 8 and 6, and taking usually a lunch break. Sometimes I'd like to do some sport during the day, meaning some running, and yeah, in the evening I like to enjoy some family time. So
Mhm.
that's most of my weekdays.
Interesting. And how about weekends? How do they look?
Yes, sometimes like also catching up on what new papers are out there, or new talks, or prepare some new content. Then I like to spend my time outdoors if the weather is not good, and then potentially reconnect with some friends.
Interesting. And any particular insight about AI which you think people still uh, misunderstand, or don't really truly understand about AI?
Um, that's a great question. I think some people haven't even tried
Mhm.
using what's really available. So I'm not sure if that's a misunderstanding, but that's something I feel they are missing out on.
I know. Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Eleni, for sharing those insights and perspectives. And great to have you on the show. And thanks a lot for doing this.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure to connect with you and your audience.
Thank you.